Hello, blissful morning, and welcome to the Pearson EdXL International Advanced Level English Literature Specifications. We would be talking in this seminar regarding the context of the novel of the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, the Bildungsroman, and the picaresque genre with the paradox of controversial and contradictory debate. So, according to the assessment objectives 4 and assessment objectives 5, as well as assessment objectives 3, demonstrating the influence or as well as the importance of the period and the era, the historical background in which the literary text had been perceived and written, and explaining the ways in which the literary text could have been interpreted by different critical interpretations and their connections across different literary genres. We have here in 1876, the same year as the publication of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, the context of the novel. Mark Twain began his working on another boy's tale of adventures along the Mississippi River. And after contemplating Tom was unsuitable to narrate the book, Twain chooses Tom's counterpart and contemporary acquaintance, the disreputable Huckleberry Finn. Huck was already well known to an American audience, thirsting for more of Twain's brand of humor and satire and caricature and travesty and parody, and Twain hoped to capitalize on his recent literary successes. Despite the end of the Civil War in 1865, the historical background comes here. It was a tumultuous and temperamental time for American Southern Reconstruction had fallen into disarray and dilapidated, deplorable despotic condition, and a new racism of segregation and condemnation and inequality replaced the slavery that had been abolished in the Emancipation of Proclamation. Twain's original intentions, as he stated to William Dean Howells, was to speak a boy of 12 and run him on through life in the first person narrative. Twain gracefully and eloquently edificed his edifice of rhetorics from his nostalgic recollection and remembrances pertaining to that of his childhood spent along the Mississippi River. We have, in the aftermath of the Civil War, envisaged the failure of the Reconstruction. However, that would embark, the work quickly bogged down and had a saging circulation. Because as the book began towards the issues of freedom and slavery, it was not a path to Twine, because that was Twine was eager to take after writing first few pages chapters. Twine inspiration was for the tale began to fade and set aside his work to pursue other projects and his aspiring dreams and visions to sail down along the Mississippi River and as a journey printer man, and his work to pursue other vocations such as A Tramp Abroad 1880 and The Prince and the Pauper 1881. While we have here allusions towards our annotations of the text, condone, accept, regard, wink at, blink at, and connive at. Tumultuous. Tumultuous means tempestuous, having strong beliefs of desire as a proof. That is the tumultuous years of the American Civil War, or the tumultuous years of the English Civil War. Well, we have in 1882, Twine began to take the manuscript and began developing the story of the young white boy named Huckleberry Finn and the enslaved black man, the runaway escapade fugitive named Jim. He worked sporadically over the next 2 years and finished the manuscript in the month of February following the year of 1885. Huck introduced himself to American readers. You don't know about me without you have read a book by the name of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. But that ain't no matter. Huck's journey down the Mississippi River has been entitled as an odyssey and a pilgrimage by audience. Indeed, characteristics of each abound in the Homer's Odyssey, but the novel was episodic in nature, that is, it is composed of episodes in many ways. Huck's adventure is a pilgrimage, a journey of exalted purpose or a morality, of that of pertaining to that of Bildung's roman. Critics consider the novel to be picaresque genre, which originated in Spain and depicts its realistic details of adventures of a roguish hero, the squalid and the scoundrel and the whelp and the humbug hero, sluggard, without which often without satiric or humorous effects. Others contend that Huck does not fit the role of rogue life, the roguish state, and that therefore the novel does not qualify as a picaresque novel. Twain did not consider the novel his best work, and he was completely unprepared for the reception that would follow in a caustic review following Huckleberry. Immediately with the publication of Huckleberry Finn, Life magazine condemned Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, elucidating the novel as expletive in nature, in perspectives of nudity and depth. The Concord Public Lecture Library Seminar Series had declared the book hold little humor and regarded it as the veriest trash. Popular author Louisa May Alcott echoed the sentiments by saying that perhaps Twain should stop writing for American boys and girls altogether if this was the only work he could offer. Although several initial reviews and critical commentaries and summaries were pessimistic in nature pertaining to the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, this was also quickly commended to an American classic as the Bildungsroman, as it exposes the expression of American imagination, American classicism, the ability to adapt to any situation, and tranquility and the serenity and the solemnity of the promiscuity of the country's great river, and the colorful and varied, vivid characters and the panoramic description of that inhabited and the vanishing frontiers are all represented within the pages of the chapters. These elemental descriptions and rudimentary prompted one of the most famous observations about Huck Finn in 1935 when Ernest Hemingway remarked that all modern American literature comes from one book by Mark Twain called Huckleberry Finn. It's the best that book that we have had. All American novel comes from that. There was nothing before, and there has been nothing as ever good as since. The novel is indeed a masterpiece of hoaxes, of frauds, and of pranks, of the elements of American humor and satire being distilled and condensed, and that with the sublimity Twain had explored in his own readings and previous writings. Well, we have here allusions towards our annotations and bibliography and further reading with the vocabulary and glossary bogged down to prevent something from making progress in an activity, to sink into mud or wet ground, marshy land, moors. So that is saging circulation. In Charles Dickens' Hard Times, we would be acquainted with that phrase, saging circulation. Sporadically means happening occasionally at intervals, not regular. Picaresque genre, a popular style of literature, art, or music that describes the description of a dishonest and rogue, squalid, malevolent, presumptuous, ostentatious, and ill-disposed personality. Well, we have here no author before Mark Twain had been able to blend American condition into such a fascinating and engaging manner. American literature was widely popular and renowned with the luminous publication of The Adventures of Huckleberry Fiends, Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, and Comrades of Tom Sawyer, with translations being polyglot, being myriad, with the multitude of the amount of scholarly articles and books continuing to dominate and sustain the study of American literature. Critical interpretations run the gamut of the expansive social commentary as the post-Reconstructionism of the Southern Society of America and culture to linguistic Afro-American vernacularity of the languages to exploration of the dark humor and the mythical trickster con man character. The book has continued to invite exegesis and ignite controversies, and its position as an American classic appears to be enshrouded. Simply put, the book contains to thrive because of its original depiction of loyalty and of sacrifice, regardless of the consequences and the aftermath. Unlike former Southern Western humor, characters such as George Washington Harris, such low, laughing, loving Longwood, and Johnson Hooper's Simon Sugg Huck does not rely upon authoritative, gentlemanly narrator to introduce his story to help explain its significance and personification. There is no doubt, and it is dubious and inevitable, that Twain drew heavily upon his literary predecessors and ancestors for their inspiration, and Huck's story is his own. He tells it from its boyish point of view and from any affection underlying the motive and purposes and affection. In doing so, Twain created a complete original American voice. A Twain scholar Hamlin Hill, notably in his introduction to the Centennial Facsimile, quoted the edition, no major writer before Mark Twain had dared to liberate, without explanation or apology, the common character to tell his own story in his own language, and so to dramatize a realistic version of the average Americanism. Average American. Well, we have here the annotations, caustic, glossary, meaning corrosive, able to destroy and dissolve substances, being sarcastic irony. Frontier, the edge of the land where people have lived and have dwelt in towns and beyond in which was unknown and obscure, desolated, especially the western part of the United States in the mid-19th century. Hoaxes, trickery and artifice to deceive people and governments, complete range of a particular theme. Exegesis, interpretation, manifestation, contemplation, and clarification, elucidation, explanation, explication, annotation, gloss. Twain did more, however, than depict a realistic version in the relativistic age of Americanism of an average American. He also presented squalid and cruel environment of the Southern as a brutal and raw manner, including his usage of the horrid and offensive term nigger. Niggers, the unabashed narrative approach to racism and the American condition, prompted Twain with American writer with promptitude and fortitude. Langstone Hughes to comment that Twain's work punctured some of the pretenses of the romantic Old South, By allowing Huck to tell his own story, Mark Twain used his realistic fiction to address America's most painful sacred cow, the contradiction to racism and the segregation in a free and equal society. While we have here a myriads and swarm of annotations, but before that I would like to remark that in my previous lecture I had noted that Mark Twain had depicted originality of the Americanism and the Southern dreamy relativistic age, that Southerners had the instinct to dream, but the Northerners, they would work. They would work diligently and they don't know how to dream. So the romanticism of the steamboat ship journey lost its essence and sublimity once, even after the reconstructionism of the Civil War and the establishment of peace and the Reformation. Well, centennial facsimile relating pertaining to a 100th anniversary of the photocopy, carbon copy, and the remark and the replica, and the reproduction and the likeness, and the myriad mimeograph, as well as the duplication. We have here squalid, dirtiness and filthiness, insalubrity and insalubrious, grimminess, grubbiness, grubby and grimy, and muckiness, and dilapidation, as well as sleaziness, slovenliness, and ramshackle and tumble down, dismay, horrid, horrible, horrifying, terrible, miserable, shocking, grueling, gruesome, grotesque, nightmarish, heinous and abominable, and detesting and deterring and admonishing, racism, prejudices, bigotry, and who knows, even the radicalism and discrimination, inequities, partiality, and favoritism and bias, pretenses, hypocrisy, fraudulence, artifices, and malevolence, and deigning and feigning, and even sham and fraudulence, and deceitfulness and conceit, falsification. Well, it is ironic that Huckleberry Finn is currently banned in several school libraries of the United States for its contents and languages. Twain's original fears were of censorship, yet his concern was that the novel would be denounced because of its positive portrayal of Jim, the optimism of Jim, and its realism of the depiction of the Southern society and culture. To mask this content, Twain infused satire and dark humor throughout the novel. Thus, Huck's tale is filled with moments of childish adventure and instances of biting satire. The rhetorical coupling of childhood fantasies and the depth is subtle, and even the technique providing the dream of the perfect childhood allows Twain to use subsequent incongruities for the purposes of social satire. We have here incongruities, which means dissonance and disharmoniousness, and even disparity and disparagement and annoyance. Well, the juxtaposition of Huck's literal attitude was, to us, being revealed at the same time with the puerile and mature instinct. In the childlike guise, he views his surroundings in a sensory manner. His environment is constructed and solidified by what he sees and hears. In the adult guise, he displays an uncanny wisdom, which means unremarkable and ghostly and queer and aboriginal and normal and ordinary, that goes beyond his years, when as he was subconsciously within his readers, conveying his readers that beneath the illusion of a carefree world there was a country filled with self-doubt. Because Huck is liberal, he sees through the idealism and brings about a sobering and realistic revelation. Annotations of censorship, sanitizing, bowdlerizing, expurgating. Official who examines the book as an examiner or an inspector or a scrutinizer of films and news and television, dramas, etc. that are to be published and suppresses the obscene and considerable vulgarity in terms of political context and contemporary views and the thematic threats towards security of the society. Puerile, childish and silly and absurd, being immature and juvenile and infantile and babyish. We have here illusions, mirage, hallucination, fantasy, phantasm, phantom, trick of the light, firmament of the imagination, will o' the wisp, ignis fatuus. Satire, the evincing the evisonage and the usage of humor and caricature, personification, irony and sarcasm, hyperbole and exaggeration in order to ridicule and criticize people's actions and follies and vices and stupidities in context of contemporary politics and other topical issues. Uncanny wisdom already elaborated. Well, when Huck contemplates his journey and adventuresome voyage aboard the raft and the canoes, and sometimes even in the um, chapter 31, readers contemplate it with him. When Huck firmly states that, all right then, I'll go to hell, readers realize that his decision is based on emotion, as well as Huck's normal logic and pragmatism, which he never escapes. This scene in chapter 31 exemplifies is a reminiscent of chapter 16, in which Huck saves Jim by deceiving the man looking for the runaway fugitive slave by intimating that there was scarlet fever on the raft. There had been scarlet fever on the raft. There he felt bad and low, because I had known very well, had done wrong. He reasons, however, that he should have felt the same way if he had turned Jim in, and he concludes, what's the use of learning to do right when it's troublesome? To do right, and it ain't no trouble to do wrong, and wages is just the same. In all his previous works, experiences, Huck retains his indifferent persona, yet at the defining moment in chapter 31, Twain empowers Huck with compassion, and with compelling compassion in doing so, establishes the philosophical possibility that both Huck and Jim can gain freedom. At this point, readers realize that Huck has moved beyond the various pranks and farces into the realm of bitter social satire. The disquieting element and disquietude in the Huckleberry Finn is not death and contradiction. The biting irony is that, and snarl witticism is that, Huck constantly believes that he is evil, and because he goes against the norms and the tenets of the society. Moreover, while technically Jim is free from the bonds of the Southern society and slavery, he is also infinitely chained to societal constructions. In the same manner, Huck and Tom, Aunt Polly, and the rest of the Twins world are enslaved. Pers- Annotations towards persona, aspects of a person's reflections of characterization. Empowers, Southern to authorize somebody's power and governance. Enslave, to make slave and captive, enslavement. Realm, an area of interest and activity and knowledge and passion, tenets, theory and principle, and maxims and precepts, and doctrine and dogma and philosophy, as well as verse, ideology. Well. We have Mark Twain's satirical charade, facade, masquerade, and irony and sarcasm and mockery, and even the allegory and satire and personification, travesty and parody.